When Sarah pulled into the small rural auction yard, she had only $300 left to her name. Her old pickup truck rattled as if it might fall apart at any moment, and the gas gauge was already flirting with empty. She'd promised her little daughter, Lily, that they would just look at the animals, nothing more. But when the gate opened, and that frail, trembling foal stumbled into the ring, something deep inside her heart broke. The foal was barely standing. Its ribs pushed sharply against its thin, dusty coat, and its eyes, huge, dark, and frightened, seemed to plead for mercy. The crowd around her laughed. "Who'd waste money on that bag of bones?" one man sneered. Another shouted, "It won't even survive the week." But Sarah didn't hear them. Her heartbeat drowned out every voice. All she saw was a creature that had been forgotten, just like she sometimes felt since her husband walked out, leaving her with bills, a child, and a heart heavy with fear. When the auctioneer called for bids, no one raised a hand. Silence. The foal's legs shook as it tried to stay upright. $10, the auctioneer said, half mocking. Still no one. And then Sarah raised her hand. Heads turned instantly. "You're kidding, right?" someone laughed. "Lady, that thing's a waste of money." But Sarah didn't back down. "300, she said firmly, every last dollar she had. The auctioneer blinked, surprised. "Sold." The gavel hit the wooden block, and the yard erupted with laughter and whispers. "Crazy woman," they muttered. "She'll regret it." As Sarah led the little foal out of the ring, she felt the weight of every stare burning into her back. The foal barely managed to follow, its hooves scraping weakly against the gravel. But when Lily ran up and gently touched the foal's muzzle, it lifted its head for the first time, and in that fragile moment, Sarah saw something no one else did, a spark of life. She whispered to Lily, "We're going to save her, no matter what it takes." And as they walked toward the truck, the sun dipped low, painting the sky gold. No one in that crowd knew that the woman they mocked had just made a decision that would soon stun them all. The ride home was long and silent, except for the faint sound of the foal breathing in the back trailer. Every bump in the road made Sarah wince, afraid that the little creature might collapse before they even reached home. By the time they pulled into the small, weather-worn ranch, the moon had already risen, pale and cold, lighting the field where broken fences leaned like tired old men. Sarah and Lily worked for hours that night. They set up an old blanket in the barn, filled a bucket with water, and mixed the last bit of oats they could find. The foal didn't eat at first. It just stared at the ground, trembling. Lily knelt beside it, whispering softly, "You're safe now. Mom says we can fix anything if we love enough." Sarah smiled weakly, if only that were true. Days turned into weeks of endless struggle. The vet told her the foal was severely malnourished and might not make it through the winter. "You'd better prepare your daughter," he warned gently. But Sarah refused to give up. She named the foal Hope. Every dawn, before taking Lily to school, she hand-fed Hope warm milk mixed with vitamins. Every night, after washing dishes at the diner, she came home exhausted, yet still brushed the little horse's mane until it stopped shaking. Her neighbors watched from a distance. "There she goes again," one woman said. "Spending time on a lost cause." Another chuckled, "Maybe she's hoping it'll magically turn into a racehorse." Sarah ignored them. For her, Hope was not just an animal, she was a promise. A silent reminder that broken things could still heal if someone just cared enough. Slowly, change began. The foal started to stand taller, eat more, even nudge Lily playfully when she brought fresh hay. Sarah noticed her steps getting stronger each day, her eyes brighter. But then, one freezing night in late December, a storm rolled over the valley. The wind howled through the barn, lightning flashing across the fields. Sarah ran outside to check on Hope, her heart pounding, only to find the foal lying still on the straw, eyes half closed, barely breathing. Sarah dropped to her knees, tears flooding her face. "Not now," she whispered. "Please, not after all this." She wrapped her arms around Hope's fragile neck as thunder shook the barn. And for the first time in months, Sarah prayed out loud. If there's anything left in me to give, take it. Just let her live. The storm raged for hours that night. Rain slammed against the tin roof, thunder cracked like gunfire, and every gust of wind felt like it might tear the barn apart. Sarah stayed there, refusing to leave Hope's side. Her old jacket was soaked, her hands frozen, but she didn't care. She kept whispering softly, "You're not alone, baby, stay with me, please." When dawn finally came, the air was thick and still. The rain had stopped, leaving a gray mist over the valley. Sarah had fallen asleep in the straw, her arm still wrapped around the foal. A faint movement woke her. Hope was breathing, deeper, stronger. Her eyes blinked open, not dull and lifeless like before, but bright and curious. Sarah gasped, sitting upright. "Lily! Come quick," she cried. Her daughter ran from the house barefoot, her hair tangled from sleep. When she saw Hope struggling to stand, she covered her mouth in shock. The foal took one shaky step, then another, then lifted her head proudly as if to say, "I made it." That morning changed everything. Sarah called the vet again. When he arrived, he examined Hope and shook his head in disbelief. "I don't know how she's still here," he admitted. "Whatever you did, it worked." Sarah smiled through tears. "We just didn't give up on her," she said quietly. Weeks passed, and Hope grew stronger every day. Her ribs faded beneath new layers of muscle, her coat began to shine, and her once timid eyes now sparkled with life. Sarah started letting her roam outside, running through the open fields. The neighbors who used to laugh began to stop by the fence, watching silently. One of them finally said, "That's the same foal you bought at the auction?" "I can't believe it." Sarah just nodded, a quiet pride swelling in her chest. By spring, Hope had become unrecognizable, tall, graceful, and full of energy. Lily could barely keep up when she ran beside her in the fields. They often raced until sunset, laughing as the foal galloped faster than any horse Sarah had ever seen. But then came a letter that would change their lives again. A local equine rescue organization had heard about Hope's recovery. They wanted to visit, take photos, and share the story. Sarah hesitated, she wasn't looking for fame. But Lily convinced her. "Mom, maybe it'll help people believe that nothing's too broken to fix." When the rescue team arrived, they were stunned. Cameras clicked, and one reporter asked Sarah, "Why did you spend your last money on her?" Sarah looked at Hope, now standing proudly in the sunlight, mane glistening like gold, and said, "Because she needed a second chance." And so did I. The article about Hope spread faster than Sarah ever imagined. Within days, local news channels called, animal rescue pages shared the photos, and soon the story of the $300 miracle foal reached people far beyond their little town. Strangers sent letters saying how Hope's story gave them strength to keep going. Others sent donations, food, and blankets to help the ranch. For the first time in years, Sarah didn't feel invisible. One morning, a man knocked on her door. He introduced himself as Jack, a trainer from a nearby stable. "I've been following your story," he said. "That horse of yours, she's got something special. Have you ever thought about entering her in the annual charity race next month?" Sarah laughed nervously. "Hope? She's never been trained for that." Jack smiled. "Then let's change that." The following weeks were filled with early mornings, dust, and determination. Jack trained Hope gently but firmly, teaching her to trust, to listen, to run with rhythm and heart. Lily stood by the fence every day, cheering, while Sarah watched with her hands clasped tight, afraid, proud, overwhelmed. When race day arrived, the same people who had once laughed at her were there in the stands. Some recognized her immediately. "That's the woman from the auction," one whispered. "No way, that's the same foal," another said in disbelief. The announcer's voice echoed across the field. "And here comes Hope, the rescue foal everyone thought would never make it." The crowd erupted in applause. Sarah felt her throat tighten as she stroked Hope's neck one last time before the start. "No matter what happens, you've already won," she whispered. the gate opened. Hooves thundered. Hope surged forward, her mane flying like fire in the wind. For a moment, it felt like time slowed. Sarah saw the skinny, trembling foal she'd once let out of that auction ring, now transformed into a symbol of strength. Hope pushed harder, passing one horse, then another. The crowd rose to their feet, shouting her name. And in a blur of motion and dust, she crossed the finish line, first. Tears streamed down Sarah's face as Lily ran to her, laughing and crying all at once. Reporters surrounded them, cameras flashing. "How does it feel?" someone asked. Sarah could barely speak. "It feels like faith paid off," she finally said, hugging Lily and Hope at once. That evening, as the sun set behind the ranch, one of the old men from the auction showed up quietly. He took off his hat, eyes glistening. "Ma'am," he said softly, "I was one of those who laughed that day. I was wrong. You saw what we couldn't." Sarah smiled gently. "Sometimes you just need to believe before you see." From that day on, Hope became more than a horse, she became a legend. Her story traveled across the country, inspiring thousands. And every time someone asked Sarah how it all began, she'd smile and say, with laughter, and a little bit of faith. Weeks passed after the race, but the echo of that day didn't fade. Hope's photo, the once skinny foal turned champion, went viral online. Headlines read, "Single mom and her $300 miracle horse prove love can heal anything." Messages poured in from every corner of the world. Some wrote about losing jobs, families, or hope itself, until they saw that story. Others said they'd gone to adopt abandoned animals because of Sarah and Hope. Sarah tried to read every message, often through tears. She had never imagined that a single act of kindness, one desperate choice made in an auction yard, could ripple so far. "We didn't just save her," Lily said one night, sitting by Hope's stall. "She saved us too." That summer, Sarah started something new, a small program she called Second Chances Ranch. It was a place where unwanted or neglected horses could recover, and where kids from troubled homes could learn to care for them. Every time a new child arrived, scared or angry, Hope was the first to greet them. Somehow, that horse could sense pain, and offer calm in return. One afternoon, a young boy named Mason arrived. He hadn't spoken a word since losing his parents months before. The first day, he just stood at the fence, watching. The next day, he reached out his hand. Hope lowered her head gently, brushing her nose against his palm. For the first time, Mason smiled. Sarah felt her heart swell. It was as if Hope had taken her mission beyond words. Months later, during a community event, the same auctioneer who'd sold Hope showed up unannounced. He walked slowly towards Sarah, holding something, a worn-out wooden gavel. "This belongs to you," he said quietly. "You turned a sale into a miracle." Sarah accepted it, her eyes misty. "No," she replied softly, "we turned a mistake into a beginning." As the years went by, Hope grew older but remained the soul of the ranch. Sarah often stood by the pasture fence, watching her graze in the sunlight, her daughter now taller, stronger, full of dreams. Sometimes visitors still asked, "Do you ever regret spending your last money that day?" Sarah would smile, the same quiet smile she wore the day Hope won the race, and answer, "Every time I look at her, I realize it wasn't the end of something, it was the start of everything." That old truck still sat near the barn, rusting, with one faded sticker on the back. It read, "Believe before you see." And under the vast sky, where once there was only struggle, now stood a small ranch, living proof that sometimes, when the whole world laughs at your faith, that's when the miracle begins. Years later, the ranch stood quiet beneath the same golden sky that once watched over a struggling woman and a half-starved foal. The fences were new now, the barns painted red, the fields wide and alive. Dozens of rescued horses grazed peacefully. All descendants of one story that had started with $300 and a desperate heartbeat. Sarah's hair had turned silver at the edges, and Lily, now grown, often handled the ranch duties. But one afternoon, Sarah noticed that Hope, older and slower, was lying under the oak tree where she always rested. The wind was soft, the world calm, the kind of peace you only get after years of storms. Sarah knelt beside her, stroking her mane. "You did it, girl," she whispered. "You changed more lives than you'll ever know." Hope's eyes blinked gently, as if she understood. In her reflection, Sarah saw not the frail foal from the auction, but a symbol, proof that love, even when it's all you have left, can move mountains. As the sun sank low, Hope took one last breath, and the air around the ranch seemed to still. Sarah stayed there, tears falling quietly, her hand resting on the horse that had saved her soul. She whispered, "Thank you for teaching me how to believe again." The next morning, Lily found a note on the kitchen table. It was her mother's handwriting, shaky but clear. "When people tell you something's too broken to fix, remember what we saw that day in the auction yard. Miracles don't always come shining, sometimes they arrive trembling, waiting for someone brave enough to see them." Years later, that note would hang framed above the entrance of Second Chance's ranch. Visitors still came from far away, drawn by the story of a woman who refused to listen to laughter, who turned mockery into miracle. And every time they asked Lily if the story was really true, she would smile and point toward the old oak tree. "Go see for yourself," she'd say. That's where belief was born. Sometimes, when the wind was right, it carried the sound of distant hooves, faint but steady, as if hope was still running across the valley, free and eternal. And those who heard it would always stop, look toward the horizon, and whisper the same words Sarah once said, "Believe, before you see." Months after Hope's passing, something unexpected began to happen. Letters and emails started flooding into Second Chance's ranch again, not with condolences, but with stories. People from around the world were naming their rescued horses Hope. Photos poured in, thin, scared foals being led out of shelters, eyes bright with new life. Each message began the same way: "We believed before we saw." Lily read them every evening, sitting on the porch where her mother used to drink coffee at dawn. Though Sarah had grown frail, she still came outside each morning to feed the horses, her steps slower now but her heart as fierce as ever. "It's not about saving them," she told Lily once. "It's about letting them save us, too." Soon, documentaries and news crews came again, this time to tell the story of what Hope had left behind. One reporter asked, "Did you ever imagine it would grow like this?" Sarah smiled softly, brushing her hand through the grass. "No. I just wanted to help one life. I didn't know one life could start a movement." With time, the ranch expanded. Volunteers came from all over, building new stalls, painting fences, planting trees around the pasture. The laughter that once mocked Sarah had long been replaced by children's giggles and horses' calm whinnies echoing through the valley. Hope's final resting place beneath the oak tree became a small sanctuary, a circle of white stones, with one simple wooden sign, "Because someone believed." Every spring, the ranch held an open day called Hope's Run. Dozens of rescued horses galloped through the valley, their manes shimmering like flames in the sun. Families watched from the hillside, clapping, cheering, some crying quietly. Among them were people who had once laughed in the auction yard, now standing with heads bowed, humbled by the miracle they'd witnessed. When Sarah finally passed away a few years later, her funeral wasn't in a church but in the open field, under that same oak tree. Hundreds came, children she'd once taught to ride, families whose horses she'd saved, even the old auctioneer. Lily stood before them, holding her mother's worn hat and said, "She taught me that love doesn't ask if it's possible. It just tries." As the crowd fell silent, a gentle wind swept through the valley, and for a moment everyone swore they heard hooves, soft, steady, fading into the distance. Someone whispered, "She's running with Hope again." After that day, Lily took over the ranch. She expanded the rescue to neighboring towns, built a small school for kids who wanted to learn care and compassion through animals, and even started a foundation under the same name, Believe Before You See. The logo was simple: a silhouette of a woman and a foal walking side by side. Years later, when tourists came to visit, Lily would guide them past Hope's resting place and smile. She started all of this, with $300, a heartbeat, and a world that didn't believe in her. And as the sun dipped low across the valley, the same golden light that had once shone on a starving foal now bathed an entire generation of life rebuilt from faith. It was a quiet evening, months after Sarah's passing. The valley shimmered under the soft orange light of sunset, and the fields buzzed gently with summer sounds. Lily had spent the whole day sorting through old things, tools, blankets, faded photos of the early ranch days. Everything smelled like hay, rain, and memory. As she walked past the barn toward the back of the property, her eyes caught the silhouette of something familiar, the old blue pickup truck. It hadn't moved in years. The paint had peeled, the tires were flat, and wildflowers grew around it, weaving nature's forgiveness through every crack. For a long moment, Lily just stood there. That truck had carried both her and her mother through everything, the day they bought hope, the nights they drove through storms, the mornings they hauled hay when there was barely enough money for food. She opened the door slowly, it creaked, heavy with rust and time. Inside, everything was just as her mother had left it. A worn blanket, a coffee thermos, and an old envelope tucked under the cracked dashboard. Lily pulled it out carefully. On the front, written in her mother's neat handwriting, were 3 words, "For when I'm gone." Her hands trembled as she unfolded the paper. "My dearest Lily, if you're reading this, it means I've gone where hope ran first. Don't cry for me, I had the life I dreamed of, not because it was easy, but because it was real. When I bought that skinny foal, I thought I was saving her. But the truth is, she saved us both. Every bruise, every doubt, every night I thought I couldn't go on, she was proof that miracles wait quietly for those who dare to believe. The world will try to tell you to be practical, to be safe. But remember, the greatest things you'll ever do will never make sense to anyone else, until they see what you saw first. Promise me, Lily, that you'll keep believing before you see. Keep opening the gates for the ones no one else wants. Because one act of faith can echo through generations. And if you ever feel alone, look to the horizon at sunset. That's where I'll be, running with hope." Lily couldn't hold back the tears. She pressed the letter to her chest, feeling her mother's words burn gently into her heart. The sky above the valley was glowing gold, the same light that had once guided Sarah home from the auction all those years ago. As Lily stepped out of the truck, the wind picked up softly, and for a fleeting moment, she heard it again. The faint rhythm of hooves, distant yet unmistakable, echoing across the hills. She smiled through the tears. "I hear you, Mom," she whispered. "And I promise." That night, Lily placed the letter in a small glass frame and hung it in the barn beside Hope's old halter. Beneath it, she wrote a single line that every visitor still reads today: "Miracles begin where the world stops believing." Under the stars, the ranch glowed with quiet life. Horses slept peacefully in the stalls, the wind moved gently through the fields, and the world seemed to exhale. Somewhere beyond the hills, where the sky met the earth, 2 spirits, a woman and a foal, ran free together forever, leaving behind a legacy not of wealth or fame, but of love that refused to give up. And so ended the story that began with laughter, a few $100s, and a heartbeat strong enough to change the world.